And today will be a little bit different. Yesterday we were about the problem-based learning. I hope you searched a lot of information for tomorrow, but today will be different. We will have two master class. We are very fortunate because we have two super experts in Europe, and I will say over the world in nature-based solution. Is Ina Samuel. She's the coordinator of EdiCitNet project. She will do the first presentation about nature-based solution, biodiversity, co-creation, etc. And the second presentation will be by the professor Natasha Tanasova from Ljubljana. Sorry, I'm not saying. Ina is from the University of Humboldt, Germany. And Natasha is from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. And she will talk more about closing loops, recovery resources, etc. So I think it will be really two very useful presentation for you. And I hope you enjoy a lot. So Ina, please.
Yeah, thank you, Antonina, for this nice introduction. Actually, me and Natasha, we know each other something like 10 years. Natasha, we have to celebrate this, right? It was 2012, yes. I remember. Yeah.
Maybe we should have gone to Girona.
Yes. Okay. So, yeah, my name is Ina Säumel. I'm a biologist and geographer by training, and yes, I would like to share with you some insights on co-creation of nature-based solutions for multifunctional, resilient and healthy landscapes. Yeah, I will talk about some lessons learned, and this is about edible cities, but also beyond. So there are always, this is the guideline, the outline of the talk. There will be always space for discussion. I will talk shortly about what are multifunction landscapes, then let's say approach a bit the issue on nature-based solutions, what is this, and talk about air, water issues, nature-based solutions on a doorstep. Then we go to the social inclusive nature-based solutions, which are in the focus of the EdiCitNet project. And we come then to communities of knowledge and practice. And yeah, in between you will find some lessons learned, and at the end there are some conclusions. You can always jump in if you want with questions. I currently don't see the chat, but maybe Antonina, you could also jump in with questions if they appear in the chat. Okay, because I don't see the chat currently. Okay, multifunctional landscapes. This is not a symbol of the Ukraine, maybe. You can, it's a photo which I have in my presentation since long. You see this nice crop field. It looks nice. And landscapes in general are multifunctional. We humans, we are geographer, biologists, or whatever, landscape planner, we assign certain categories to different land uses and focus on a certain function. So this stereotypic thinking limits to see and to appreciate the multifunctionality of landscapes. You know maybe that the ecosystem service approach can be criticized in many ways, but it helped us a lot to step out of the disciplinary ivory tower and to reflect on landscape on a more holistic way. In the whole presentation, you will find literature in. I will also share the slides, and in the folder which shared Antonina with you, there is mostly all the literature that I could share. Yeah, and there's a literature list where you could go in and read more about it. As an example for this stereotypic thinking, I would take the conservation ecology issue, which focuses mainly on pristine remnants of natural or partially also Arcadian landscapes, but really rarely human-dominated landscapes are into this focus. And you can see this example here from Uruguay, from the grasslands in the southern corner of America. They are dominated by grasslands, and also grasslands hold the most part of biodiversity, but in the let's say the areas which are with a certain conservation mode, there are mainly forests which only cover 5% of the landscape and not so much biodiversity. So, or aquatic ecosystems, they are also not the main ecosystems, but they are on focus of conservation because the people think that this is the pristine landscape, and this, yeah, is an issue. Yeah, if we don't focus also on human-dominated landscapes, they are dominating our landscape, and we should check for conservation measures also in these landscapes. So what is lacking many times is the human dimension of landscape. We have to go beyond black and white perspectives. On the left side, you see, for example, below forest and above native forest, and we should check also in landscape types that are not native, not pristine, and which are mainly human dominated. We should check to find ways to save biodiversity, to keep the balance with all resources. And so it's a strategic goal to combine and balance different needs, also the human needs, to have healthy, biodiversity-friendly and sustainable productive landscapes in urban and rural landscapes. Important is, and also thanks to the ecosystem service approach, we are able to look on cultural landscapes or on cultural imprints on landscapes, which are really important because they also show what past generations did in the landscape. We have historic imprints that are interesting. We can also again learn from these past imprints, and we can reconnect geographical spaces to culture, identity, meaning, enhance awareness of local history, and sharpen landscape scholarly value. What a geographer in the school learns to see a landscape, to interpret the landscape, to connect to the landscape, to know about the history, to know all things from the holistic way of landscape science. And cultural ecosystem services are key for sustainable planning and management with people. Okay. That's a key. This is a first key learning, and now we jump into the urban landscapes. Here you see some figures, some pictures from Berlin and some cities here nearby. Actually, the photo on the left down, it's no, right down, it's from Nice. And we jump into the different topics. First, a short definition on nature-based solutions. Maybe you talked already about it. Following the European Commission, they are cost-effective solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, providing environmental, social, and economic benefits. What I see really as an important aspect of nature-based solutions is the transdisciplinary research, which also goes into design and implementation, and which is more integrative and systemic. Here also a literature which I recommend to check. If we look on urban areas, you can see nature of very different types of nature, let's say, and all these types of nature provide ecosystem services, and there is really a large body of literature on these different types, and of some of these types I will focus in the following slides. Important is, for example, that we link what happens in cities with the challenges, with the urban challenges, and one is of course a public health issue. I'm not talking about Corona, but it's related, of course, also to vulnerability of certain groups, and this is the issue of air pollution and dust particulate matters. And you see this is really also a big problem in Central Europe. Here you see the map from Germany. The dot, the big large red dot on the left above, this is Berlin. It's not so healthy to live here in Berlin. And you can see the lost lifetime due to exposure to air pollution. And this is really an important issue. And nature-based solutions can help to mitigate, to reduce this health issue by air filtering. And interestingly, here you can see different roadside verges that are mostly well cutted and kept and cared, and this English version of caring these green spaces is really appreciated by some of the residents, but more expansive exploration of this development of these plants would help really to filter more. And interestingly also, the diversity of the plants that are there enhance the filter capacity. So biodiversity has really also a function as supporting service like filtering, air filtering. What is also important, to link this information with the public and with the people. And one tool is this using art as a tool. We did this with colleagues from the Bauhaus University Weimar and checked in an artist exhibition what the people see on the surface of plants. We used flowers in this case, and you can see in these microscopes, you can see the dust particulates on the surface, and you can share this information and develop awareness on this. Jumping a bit to water, to biodiversity aspects of water, later on, Natasha will go much more deeper into this topic. These ponds, rain gardens, swales, green facades and green roofs that you can see here are technical infrastructures. And they could be used to make the city much more livable and healthy. And there are different concepts how rainwater management and water management in cities occurred in the past. You can also read this in a paper which is in the folder. This started with the water supply city, it came to the waterways cities, the drain city, the sewage city, then the blue waste city, the water cycle city, the water sensitive city, which includes also the social aspects and the socioeconomic aspects of water in the city, coming to the blue-green city, which includes blue and green spaces and on this aspect. And we developed the water sensitive city, which is biodiversity friendly. And it was part of a project where we co-worked in a transdisciplinary approach also with water engineers, and many of them asked us why it's needed to have a biodiverse city. It's just green, it's fine. And it took some years, 2 years in the process to in the project to discuss this with the engineers, why biodiversity is important. First, what we learned from the air filtering issue is they support ecosystem services. You also maybe think in insects that have several services, but biodiversity makes also happy. There are studies on this where people feel better if they are in a biodiversity rich environment. Biodiversity makes healthy, as an example, the filtering aspect. And biodiversity is very important where people live and work. And it's attractive. You can check literature that that people like also these, let's say, wild and biodiversity-rich areas in a city. And we analyze, and this is also really interesting, what biodiversity potential could have these measures, like ponds, rain gardens, swales, green facades, and which habitat services are provided, which are the drivers and pressures, and which planning and design and management options can be derived or have been identified before and can be developed further. It's really important that we unlock the potential of these elements, and we can shape biodiversity by planning and design. And very important in urban context is the contextualization within the urban matrix. Look what are the neighboring areas, which use is there, and to enhance connectivity and do small-scale interventions that optimize the biodiversity services. And it's very important to overcome architectural restrictions and regulations, which are often obstacles to design and install rainwater management measures. As an example, it's really like this. You can see this bioswale here. And we checked the regulations that are existing in Germany. Well, the Germans are well known for regulations, but maybe it's similar in other countries of Europe. We have standard design and seed mixtures in as well. You can you have in general 10 different species, only 10 different species or less than 10. And the Berlin standard swales have over 60 different rules. And only, which you have to follow. And even it was in a project really complicated to install some intervention, to make some biodiversity interventions, to test if the functionality of the swale is reduced if we use another seed mixture than the standard mixture. So interventions is an important word, a key aspect for this, and you can see here you can use some disturbances, you can use insert some dead wood or different soil substrates without reducing functionality, and so you can combine human activities and biodiversity friendliness. And it's really important to leave more room for biodiversity conservation in these human-dominated landscapes without restricting the anthropogenic use of these areas. This was the project where we were working on these biodiversity issues. Very important also as lessons learned. It's good to write nice scientific papers, but it's more important to write simple guidelines for application that are understandable for the people that have to, or that are working with these issues. This means in our cases, often housing companies that have green spaces around and use these methodologies to keep the water in the city. And what is also important, do good and talk about it and showcase this, what we also do in the EdiCitNet project with living labs and other showcases. And here in Berlin, we have the ecological map where you can see these examples and you can go there and look at it. And this is really an important learning. Also to keep the information not only in the ivory tower of the scientists, but to mainstream it. We did this actually also in workshops with people at the location. We discussed this, and at the end of this project, in a follow-up project, there was a card play developed with information where you can use it for planning blue, green, gray infrastructure, and you can playing this, you can talk to other actors, you can discuss this, and actually it's, we recently got this, it's really a nice play, which could be also helpful in other cities where this is something developed in German. Okay, so we had a short visit of the water issue, and then we go deeper into the nature-based solutions on our doorsteps, which means the residential greenery, where we have also these swales and green facades, etc. We define this as green of the immediate surroundings of the residential buildings. They look quite different from neighborhood to neighborhood, because the architects and the designer in general have also an idea on these green spaces. So they are really different. They look different. They have different sizes. You have these very inner city areas with small pieces of green and small elements of nature-based solutions. And you have these larger housing estates, the row buildings or these high-rise buildings where you have much more space. However, these spaces are now under pressure, at least in the cities which have an issue on providing affordable housing. In Berlin, there's really a strong need for more affordable housings, and this means that there will be now or is currently ongoing a construction wave, and these areas are under pressure and also partially disappearing because these areas are not public. In Germany, at least, the public green is protected from constructions in general, but these semi-public areas have a large, or they are really important, but they have not this protection status. And there's currently running the densification of urban areas. And of course, this has effects on health, on provision of ecosystem services. And this is, let's say, interlinked with ecology, with social aspects, with economic aspects, and it deals with our life, with the way we as citizens that live in urban areas deal with this. I would like to share some insights from a study we did in different neighborhoods in Berlin, which are typical for Central European cities. You have these dense, older neighborhoods from the 90s, and then these larger environments with larger green areas and high-rise buildings, and so as a contrasting setting. And we checked the status quo of ecosystem services, health relevant ecosystem services that are provided. And you can see there are many, of course, the habitat service for flora and fauna, the rainwater management measure, the dust catching is of course also very important. Air filtering provide fresh and cool air, and and of course they are also playing grounds. These are places where you can explore nature, perceive nature, birds singing or whatever. You can move there, you can do exercises, you can rest there, you can meet neighbors, you can find nice places. So it's really these are really important places in the city for health and for biodiversity, or as habitat services. We checked the status quo in areas where the social economic status is low, and also the environmental justice is low. So this means there are heat waves, there are air quality problems, there are noise problems, and there are less public green spaces in the neighborhood. And interesting is that beside of the general layout by a certain famous architect, we after several decades, we cannot find a common plant use mode in across the neighborhood. So there is rich ornamental diversity, let's say. We have mostly trees there that have a high air filtering quality, but we have also at the same time many species that have a high allergenic potential. So this is something that is not yet perceived by those people that are designing plant uses in these areas. And this is something that you maybe also know from playgrounds. There are often toxic plants or plants with nice fruits that are toxic for kids. And this is actually ununderstandable because the scientists have written about it since long, but there is a gap between what the scientists produce and what the applicators or the people in planning and gardening and landscape planning are using. Common are bike racks, benches, lights, playgrounds, etc. Very, very rare. And this is something that where we have to think about it as nature-based solution enthusiasts. Why biospheres, green facades, building attached green atrium fountains and ponds are very rare in these areas. This is something we have to think. Actually, we have a lot of measures in Berlin, for example, also financial incentives to install these things, but they are not used. And we discussed this in workshops with the housing companies, and they always ask for simple guidelines. They see the value of these measures, but there is a missing link between what we know from scientific perspective to the practical guidelines. So this is something where we should focus on. Of course, this residential green was really important during the lockdowns. Maybe every one of us experienced this. Before this, also residential green was very appreciated. And much more appreciated than the public parks. They were used by the residents or the people we interviewed in the study was used only once per week, but they daily benefited from their residential greenery. Passive uses outweighed active uses, and yeah, there are very different views on this green, and the people are very attached to the place and less to the neighbors. We also look from above, from the window view, because many senior residents have are not so mobile to go out, and actually then in the lockdowns we experienced the same. So the view out of the window is really health relevant, and they are really important, and they look totally different from ground perspectives. So when we did our mapping on ground, we experienced a totally different area compared to what we have seen then later on from the window perspectives. Interestingly, also here, vegetation and structural elements that are related to recreation are positively perceived. And also, as an example, laundry areas, which are not used anymore because people are afraid that maybe the clothes will be stolen, they are positively perceived, and they remember the people from the past, and from these images that the multicolored clothes are there, and it's maybe more in remembering the past uses, but they still are important in the perception of the people. We did this interviews again in summer 2020, and there the people really recognized this as an important refuge during the COVID crisis. And interestingly, now the park visits increased, and also the active uses increases. So the crisis fostered the appropriation of residential greenery to meet neighbors, to do sports, and we hope that in this this is a learning for other times without such a pandemic situation, that people can actively appropriate their environment and change and create it. So there are also scientific publications that you can check in the list, but very important, the green one again. It's very, very simple guideline how for decision makers, for housing companies, how to use these different measures. For example, which serve in which type of neighborhood, which space you need, and this is what people, what housing companies need to at least install or to lower the barrier to install nature-based solutions. And an important learning as well from this study is that people want to appropriate their environment and wants to change it, wants to design it. And there we come finally to the EdiCitNet project and to the socially inclusive nature-based solutions that are in the center of this project, which are the so-called edible city solutions, also nature-based solutions that are edible. At least we propose to the European Commission that they overcome the mismatch between nature-based solutions and citizens by deepening the social dimension of nature-based solutions. And the main issue is really that the people are doing themselves, creating, planting, designing in these gardens and installations the environment, and are not only invited to use the green like in a park. We observed this in the existing initiatives of urban food initiatives of edible city solutions, and we propose that, or the mission of the project is to mainstream successful co-creation practice of edible city solutions that are socially inclusive, invite citizens to co-create and proactively change also their urban environment and change also the lifestyle. So we talk about co-created communities of knowledge and practice. I will go on this later on a bit deeper. Some of you know this this triangle. Yes, these are these solutions are multifunctional. They provide economic benefits, social, cultural benefits, and environmental benefits. And these edible solutions are really, yeah, they can be very diverse. They cover a wide range of different forms of urban farming, food production, distribution, consumption. And very important is that they combine closed loop systems, food and sustainable water, nutrient and waste management. And they use innovative principles of ecological design. This is really important. And yeah, so they amplify the benefits from traditional nature-based solutions from supply of ecosystem services such as cooling, air, water cleaning, habitat service, co-creation effects, also towards provisioning services that address food security, poverty alleviation, and inequality in urban areas. So what is maybe interesting to focus here is on the urban food commons and the urban food commons movement. And actually, we as scientists learned a lot about the successful projects worldwide. Here you see some examples. They already proved the emancipative citizens commitment. People go there, work on this against a lot of pressures and barriers. They overcome this, and they do really successful inclusive urban regeneration. And the people that are normally involved in these initiatives are doing this for longer, on a longer run, and they do co-design, co-implementation, and long-term co-management. So they really use the city's resources in a sustainable way. So there are impressive benefits, not only in regard to the inclusive and participatory dynamics, but also in terms of income. There are new green businesses developed along the value chain, or if you prefer to talk about a value loop, including also using the resources in a circular mode. And the target impact we are working on is really to help to realize this paradigm shift to reuse-oriented cross-sectoral management of natural resources in cities. How we do this? We have two main development streams which we develop with cities. There are some more, hopefully also Natasha will talk about this. We co-create and test Adobe city solutions in so-called living labs, which are like demonstration projects in cities. So there is money and also the power to install a project, which is an incentive for co-creation, so that citizens engage, do something and change something and test it, monitor it, so and discuss all these issues, also including doing things wrong. This also happens, of course. And there's a second stream, which is co-developing sustainable master plans for Adobe cities. So there people are discussing how the urban planning should look like and change to reach the goal to become an Adobe city. We do this with this co-creation approach. I'm sure that you have heard about this co-creation in the past. Currently, also European Commission is thinking that co-creation is a promising step for addressing complex societal problems. So, to assure inclusiveness, representation, empower people, and to be effective, and and to use local knowledge of multiple actors to navigate in these challenging times, in times of change and of uncertainty. And there's also a goal to expand scientific and administrative knowledge and literacy within the urban society, so the people know what we talk about, and there's a collective intelligence which drives innovation. So we co-create, co-design, co-everything. It's it's an important strategy for city making and city transitioning. You can what we talk about community of practice and knowledge, this is really an interesting process. It's an open-ended process and a time-consuming process. Important in this process as lessons learned we have from our project is really to keep transparency about all goals, the problems, definitions, monitoring of all, and to provide incentives for co-creation. There are many tools that you can use: transition pathways, arenas, living labs, or serious gaming, among others. We do this in these living labs. Here I would like to invite you to check also the EdiCitNet website to have some more insights. And this, interestingly, it's really as a lessons learned from the project, it was more successful to strengthen existing projects or processes than starting from scratch. And so it's really important to scale, to go from one successful project to the city in general. We have different governance modes. In general, in EdiCitNet, we have a co-governance or a non-government actor-led model. So this means really that people, initiatives, food initiatives try to install their project, to develop the projects, and the administrations are supporting this process. We have in the second work stream, we try to develop these master plans, which are co-created, and there's also a learning. In general, all cities analyze first the status quo, analyze their own system, then they develop a scenario. That is also an important tool for co-creation, and then they think about concrete action plans, how to make this transfer possible. And here, lessons learned I can share with you is that you as scientists or as leading such a process, it's really important to be open to which methodology the people like to use. So we see now in our cities that are doing master planning that we have really diverse co-created local methodologies. And it's okay like this. It's like the local knowledge, they know what works on local scale and they know their local culture and barriers. And yeah, this is a really important learning. We do this, of course, not with all citizens in a city. This is not possible. We have these city teams. They are open and participatory. We have their actors from different levels, so we could also break down the silo thinking a bit between different departments in a city. We have planners, they are members of local NGOs or businesses or citizens. And they all do this collective learning process, which is really enriching and where we learned a lot and we are learning a lot. You can see the cities there, the website as well. What is interesting is really these city teams are committed to this multi-stakeholder transdisciplinary approach. This means discuss a lot what means the others, try to understand going out of the bubble, let's say, and it's more complex, it's more difficult to come up with comments, but it's also very enriching. We try always to explain this as like a football team. Everybody is important in the football team and has this function, and the idea is to grow together and play a team play. I will, concerning the time, I will jump a bit over some slides. Here you can see lack of mainstreaming is one important issue for lowering barriers for mainstreaming adaptive solutions, and land assessment is an important point, and also the lack of integration of adaptive cities in planning policy tools. There are also some negative things of co-creation. I have to say we have issues of powers in the teams. So there are people that are voiceless or they are not represented. This is also something that we have in other sister projects. You can't reach always all, but you have to try to do it. And there are power asymmetries. So there are people that are have louder, have more arguments or more influence or more information and can dominate a debate. This is really an issue. And yeah, so there's situational management is always important for a smooth collaboration, but of course there are also conflicts. So I would really like to invite you to look on the website, and there are different formats to participate in the project. I would really like that you could share this. Some last comments for your maybe future professional development. It's really important to create knowledge for the practice and not for the drawer. So it's really also, it's not so academic, attractive to produce guidelines, planning instruments or something like this. But this is what we need to really make a change in our cities or in general in the world. Then 1 + 1 is sometimes more than 2. So please expand your perspectives and horizons and include all actors, ask citizens, mayors, etc., whatever you want. There is the innovation, really include more knowledge types or ways of thinking in the process. and open your minds for this. And what is also interesting is you can use the citizen science approach to open new knowledge fields and have other perspectives. We do this mostly with kids that are really curious scientists, and they will be the informed citizens of tomorrow. So this is my part, Antonina. I'm not sure if there is some seconds for questions or this.